This is Living Max Health Podcast, where we're here to teach you the principles, the practice, the actions, the habits that it takes to be healthy in your life over the course of your entire life, from the beginning of your life all the way through to the end. And so all the principles and all the things that we're going to be teaching you here are going to be designed to help you build skills in the disciplines that you need in your life to be able to change it for the positive and to be able to make a difference in the quality of your life. Today, I have a very special guest with me today. This is Howard Rontal. We're patching in with him all the way from Kauai, Hawaii, all the way across the globe here. And Howard is a tremendous body worker. He worked on me for many years, and I can only speak so highly about what it is that he did for me. And so I want you to be aware of these methodologies, these things that are available to you, so that when you're out in the world and you're looking for solutions to the problems that you have, that you can actually find some of these types of practitioners that can help you in your own life. So welcome, Howard, to the conversation. This is Living Max Health, and we're so thrilled to have you here.
Lovely to be talking to you again.
Thank you. So maybe talk a little bit about your origin story, where you started, how you got into body work. Maybe share with the audience about just how has this gone for you here?
Well, how I got into body work seemed at the time to be total serendipity. I quit a previous job in publishing and journalism rather suddenly, kind of a crisis of consciousness, and didn't know what else I was going to do. A friend of mine found out I quit and called me initially just to find out how I was doing. In fact, I was rather nutty. I had gone out and bought a Cadillac without having a job. It was a used Cadillac, but
to celebrate the losing of your previous job. Okay.
Exactly. But in the middle of our conversation, she said she essentially invited me to apply for the position of administrative assistant to Joseph Heller. Joseph Heller was the founder of a kind of body work, Rolfing to be exact, but he had his own take on it.
Was he partners with Ida Rolf, or was
he was trained by Ida Rolf, and she did name him the first president of the Rolf Institute. After 3 years, though, he went out on his own because he had some other ideas of things that he felt could be included within Rolfing, which Ida did not think could be included, at least by her.
So there's similarities between Rolfing and Hellerwork, but obviously there's a division too.
Yeah, the body work itself is straight Rolfing, i.e. structural integration. Mm-hmm. But what Joseph included was conversations for self-awareness, i.e. life coaching, around themes developed by the psychologist C.G. Jung and related to the parts of the body we're working on. We aren't looking for pathology. What we're looking for is how people handle common problems in their life, things that they have to negotiate as a human being. So for instance, the first session where we're working on freeing up the breathing apparatus, what we talk about is what inspires people. And are they engaged with it? In the second session, we work on the feet and lower legs. And the theme of the session is, because Joe Heller liked puns, standing on your own 2 feet. Issues of self-responsibility and individuation. How individuated are they? How self-responsible are they? Again, we're not looking for pathology here. We're not trying to determine whether the person is psychotic or not. Just how
whether they have some sort of disease process in their body.
Exactly. What we're looking for is how well they handle these common issues in everyday life. What Joe discovered when he began doing this is that many ordinarily healthy people did not handle these common issues very well, or did not handle all of them very well. So that's how we work with people. The other thing he added to Rolfing was movement sensitivity exercises, because he discovered in his Rolfing practice that people were coming to see him again after they finished the Rolfing series with some of the same problems that Joe thought he had freed them from on the table. He reasoned correctly, I think, that they were going back out into their lives. Their environments were signaling all sorts of old movement patterns, not to mention psychological patterns. So he borrowed exercises from Judith Aston and Aston patterning, and included them in every session, and asked people to practice them between the sessions.
So it was doing a combination of both physical release with psychological introspection, maybe?
Yes, yes, and new movement patterns.
Okay.
Ida Rolf thought of Rolfing as a whole body therapy. Joseph Heller conceived of Hellerwork as a whole person therapy.
Got it. Wow, that's actually, I didn't understand that about their connection between Joseph Heller and Ida Rolf. Yeah. So did you also have exposure at that time to Rolfing, or because you started working for Joseph, you fell right into the Hellerwork model?
Well, ironically, 5 years before I went to work for him, I was Rolfed by a Rolfer who was in Ida Rolf's last class before she died. He was very good and went on to be a superb Rolfer. Unsolicited plug here for that Rolfer. His name is Tony Zimkowski. He practices in Southeast Michigan. Lovely guy, great Rolfer. And one of the things he did through the Rolfing series, especially because he was a new Rolfer, was he took pictures of me after every session in front of a grid. After about the 6th session of pointing out to me how my posture was changed and getting my feelings on the matter, he noticed that I had a pretty good eye for human structure. And he commented on it. And he said, you might want to consider becoming a Rolfer. And at the time, I was a newspaper reporter looking to work on a larger newspaper, to go from a weekly to a daily. And I was very happy doing it, and said, no, not interested. Thanks anyway. This is a great experience, but no, I want to eventually work for either the Detroit Free Press or the Washington Post.
Got it.
6 months later, I was out of journalism, and then went into publishing. But I was no longer a journalist.
So between that instance in your life, was it much later? Because I remember you telling me at one time that your dad was having physical problems, and part of your kind of motivation, so to speak, was really around preserving yourself because you saw what had happened with him. So really from at least within kind of the Living Max Health conversation about aging and about how we preserve the body, what is it that you have been able to see through Hellerwork that has allowed people to expand their ability to move, to be healthier in their life through those methods?
Let me talk first about my father, because one of the most dramatic examples of that I have. My father was quite a doubting Thomas. He couldn't understand what I was doing. Here I had quit a perfectly good job in journalism to do what?
Dad, so I want to put my hands on people.
Yeah. He couldn't get it.
Didn't go over well.
I spent 2 years trying to convince him to sell him on the idea that he needed my services as a Hellerwork practitioner. And eventually he acquiesced and agreed to get the sessions. He really needed the body work. Hellerwork, like Rolfing, in terms of the body work, is designed to align the body in a gravitational field. Why is that important? Because a body that's not aligned in gravity is a body that's constantly resisting gravity.
Hmm.
And a body that's resisting gravity is constantly tightening up in the face of gravity. Eventually, the fascial tissue, which is what we manipulate, not muscle fiber intentionally, but fascial tissue, becomes hard, rigid, inelastic, and adhesive. It literally becomes a glue. And it holds those distortions of posture in place.
So really, just let me add a comment here. So for the people listening here, um, you have the muscular structure which allows you to move in your life, but what can happen is that the muscles can start to stick together because of bad movement patterns, maybe your posture, the way that you're moving, or accidents and injuries you've had through sporting types of activities. Can be a variety of different things, even including your individual genetics. And so this
All of that's true. Yes.
all the fascial layer covering the muscles and between the muscles and over the organs and between the organs and whatnot. So that's what he's talking about.
Yes, that is accurate. And fascial tissue also goes from being a lubricant to being an adhesive, just as part of the aging process. We tend, as human bodies, to desiccate as we age, and also the inflammatory process. So inflammation in any area will cause fascial tissue to knit up.
Mm-hmm. It's one of the reasons why after surgery that they're so adamant about getting inflammation out of the area, because
Yes.
you can literally make it so that you do surgery on a knee and then it can't move afterwards if you don't rehab it correctly.
Exactly, because the fascial tissue and the other soft tissue knit up. Probably ought to define fascial tissue here for your audience. Fascial tissue is that white membrane that wraps and interweaves all the muscles down to the fiber level. 40% of your muscle by weight is actually fascial tissue. It's not the quote unquote red meat. And fascial tissue's principal function is as a lubricant. It allows muscle fibers to slide against muscle fibers, fascicles, which are about the diameter of a kite string, to slide on fascicles, muscle bundles, which are composed of fascicles, to slide against other muscle bundles, muscles to slide against muscles, muscles to slide against bone, et cetera, et cetera. Fascial tissue also wraps all your bones. That fascial tissue is called periosteum. It wraps all your organs. It is your spinal cord or your spinal column. And it also wraps your brain.
It is this, what do you mean
omnipresent.
by that? What is this? It is the spinal column. What does that mean?
Well, your spinal cords go through a tube, and that tube is very thick, fibrous fascial tissue.
Mm-hmm. So the spinal
Meningeal
cord and the meningeal layers of the spinal cord.
are fascial tissue.
Got it. So what Howard's speaking to, the spinal cord, which is an extension of the brain, there are multiple layers, and you're saying that the outer layer is a fascial layer. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So I imagine it's probably just designed to protect the spinal cord from injury.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
It can, however, knit up. And in fact, there is a specific therapy designed to free up the spinal cord called cranial sacral therapy.
Got it. So there's so much interaction between different forms of body work. So craniosacral therapy is actually related to sacro-occipital technique, which is a chiropractic technique.
Yes.
And all of the meningeal type of work through craniosacral or other things have spill over into different techniques. So if you're an individual and you're looking for solutions to your body, it's not just one thing. It's actually, there's overlap between different methods, and sometimes it's finding the right practitioner or person to help you.
Absolutely.
And you know, I love the Hellerwork approach. I've certainly had many deep tissue massages and sports massages and different things like that. The thing that I like about body work as a craft is that it literally changes the body, changes the relationship of the muscles in relationship to the bones, the relationship with the
Yes.
frame of the human body. Unlike if you go for a relaxing massage, it feels good afterwards, which is fine. But if you really want to make some structural changes to your body, or you have injuries that you're trying to heal, it's important to make sure that you work through some of the challenges that your body is holding on to so that you can actually move forward in your life.
Nicely put. Which brings me back to the example of my father. My father was 75 when I started work on him, and he was developing the family pattern scoliosis. His elder siblings, a sister and a brother, one 10 years older, one 5 years older, were already becoming twisted and bent because of their scoliosis. And I could see the process beginning to happen in my father. And frankly, I was a little desperate on his behalf because I could see where this was going in my uncle and aunt. And in fact, they died in their early 90s as a result of their scoliosis. They became the most crippled and bent individuals I have ever seen. In my 33 years of practice, they were the worst. They didn't die, obviously, directly of their scoliosis. Scoliosis doesn't kill you. What it does is it collapses the lungs. And eventually, they couldn't get enough oxygen. They couldn't get enough through their lungs. They couldn't get enough blood through their lungs to expel the fluid in their lungs. The fluid became infected, and they both died of pneumonia.
Got it.
I could see that my father was headed toward this. I was afraid for him, and that's why I spent 2 years campaigning to allow me to work on him. So I did, in fact, straighten his posture. And then I continued to visit him on a regular basis to give him tune-ups to help maintain it. He lost the family pattern scoliosis continued in him. That is to say, he lost disc height and vertebral height. He went from 5'8" to 5'2". But his spine collapsed straight down. He was still vertical. He wasn't twisted. He wasn't bent.
And what did you observe was actually collapsing? Was it the actual bones themselves? Was it the space between the discs? Was it the curvature that was developing? What were you noticing?
Space. He didn't develop a curvature. That's what I saved him from. It was the discs and the vertebrae themselves.
Wow. So my understanding is that the discs themselves comprise about a third of the height of the entire spine. So hypothetically, if you lost every single disc in your between the bones in your spine, you'd lose about a third of the height of your spine. But you may also lose like you're saying, the physical height of the bones as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he went from 5'8" to 5'2".
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, listen, we're all aging here, Howard. We're
He
all
was still
aging.
strong as an ox, but he was only 5'2".
I think about it. I think about it a lot, not from the standpoint that I feel like I'm old, but I feel like as we get older, right? When we're 2 years old, we're getting older.
Yeah.
We're just getting older. And so we're all getting older. And to the degree that we can come up with ways to slow that down, stop it, change direction. So speak to it a little bit about maybe your work with people directly. What can people expect if they find a Hellerwork practitioner in their area? They can certainly fly to Hawaii and come see you.
I would love it. I just moved here and I have to rebuild a practice. Perhaps not as intense as the one I had in Potomac, Maryland,
Yeah.
but I have to rebuild a practice. So please come.
There you go. And Howard also he's an instructor. He teaches other people, trains other people in what it is that he does through Hellerwork and the other things that he's learned through body work.
Yes.
And so we'll make sure that we put the notes below so that people can get in contact maybe with one of the providers that you've trained, and use them as a resource. What are the cities? Are people all over the country, or they're all over the world? Where are these practitioners?
We trained about a little over 4,000 people in the 26 years we've been doing this. I don't train them in Hellerwork. I train them in a very simplified version of what I do, which is based on Hellerwork, but now includes other things as well. And they are primarily in these states: Michigan, Ohio, Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, a few in New York State, and nicely scattered all over New England.
Wow. Okay.
And there's a few in other states around the country as well.
And then is there also a separate Hellerwork society, association?
Oh, yes.
So there's other Hellerwork practitioners who do maybe closer to the original Hellerwork methodology that you originally practiced?
Yes, Hellerwork.com has a list of those people.
Got it. Okay, well, listen, and so people started coming to you. You're working on them. You found that you had an aptitude for, working on people's bodies and making a change. What are some of the things that you've noticed? Some of the more dramatic changes that you've noticed in people that maybe they don't realize is possible. Sometimes I think people think this is just the way that it's going to be, and is it really going to make a difference if somebody comes and works on me and opens things up?
Well, I'm thinking about that question. A number of people come to mind. Here's one. I had a client in my old practice in Potomac, Maryland, a lovely woman, about 10 years younger than myself, who had contracted multiple sclerosis. And when she came to see me, she was headed downhill. Her musculoskeletal system and her nervous system were degrading, just that simple. She used a wheeled walker. She labored to use it. And she was depressed because of it. I did the Hellerwork series on her, and it freed up the tissue so well that she stopped declining. She still needed to use a wheeled walker, but she got around much better. Oh, another thing that happened, this was very much addressing what you just asked. One of the symptoms of her MS was exhaustion. When she first came to me, she said, if I'm active for one day, I'm in bed for the next 2 days. What I found out by working on her is a lot of her exhaustion was caused by having to overwork the muscular tissue in order just to move, because it was so tight. It was so stiff. So by the time we finished the Hellerwork series, which is an 11-session series, she no longer had that kind of exhaustion. She essentially lived a normal life, doing all the things she wanted to do, albeit with a wheeled walker. But she was no longer exhausted afterward.
That's amazing.
She didn't have to go to bed for 2 days after a day's worth of activity.
So that's a great example of, somebody who certainly has a more chronic condition that, there are things that you can do, that you can implement, again, bodywork strategies, body-centered strategies to change movement and amount of life and energy and all of these things. But the most of us who are maybe not having chronic problems like that, but we're physically active. I know for myself, I have injuries. I injured my right shoulder, which I know you've worked on many times, from an old tennis injury. I was 15 years old, and that shoulder is still not 100%. It's pretty close. It's 90%, maybe 85%, but it's not 100%. And so over the course of our life, we have injuries, or people are in auto accidents. Tell me about your experience with that, and how quickly maybe changes can actually happen with people who are younger, who are taking a more proactive approach.
One of the things that Hellerwork will do, aside from aligning the body, I better go back a step here to give a little more foundation to my answer. The purpose of Hellerwork, as in Rolfing, is to align the body in a gravitational field. A body that's aligned in gravity is not a body that is chronically resisting gravity. As the longer you resist the pull of gravity, the tighter your muscular system becomes, the harder it is to move. So a byproduct of aligning the body in a gravitational field is to free it up for movement. So, for instance, I've had people come to me who wanted better posture, who were athletic. And one of the things they got out of the Hellerwork series, and even out of the first session, was the ability to breathe better, breathe fuller. In the first session, we aligned the thorax, the rib cage, over the pelvis. But in doing that, we really free up the muscles related to respiration. So people get off the table, they breathe more fully often than they can remember breathing as an adult. I have a number of letters on my website, for instance, of people who have gone to the gym afterward and found out that they could do far more cardio than they ever thought possible because they were breathing better. I think that answers your question, at least with one example.
Yeah, I think that's a good example. Is maybe talk to a little bit about, people often ask me, is this going to hurt? When I'm working on them, they'll ask that question, is this going to hurt? And I go, usually no. But, from your experience, because I've had Hellerwork, and it's not always so comfortable, and it's not a painful technique. I think a lot of it has to do with the practitioner. Would you agree with that?
It does. It absolutely does. Joe Heller used to tell this story. He said that Rolfers originally learned to work in a way that was painful to their clients. And it was because of the way Ida Rolf taught them. It wasn't the way she actually worked. But Oh, I guess I'll tell the whole story. She was a rather imperious woman,
I'm sorry.
and
Who
she was
was?
imperious. And she ordered her students around, and she didn't care what you thought of her. All she cared about was making you into the best Rolfer she could make you. So if she saw you working and you weren't going deep enough, she would yell at you. Joe said well, he said, Joseph,
It's,
God damn it,
listen,
go
we love
deeper.
you, Ida. You brought a tremendous craft to the world, and again, we're trying to cut through the BS and get to like the good stuff, because
Well,
listen,
yeah,
we don't.
to answer your question, Rolfers, according to Joe, Rolfers caused pain because that's the way Ida taught them. He discovered it didn't have to work by watching her work occasionally. So he taught his practitioners to work more gently, with equal depth, but more gently. That doesn't mean the work is painless. There is pain sometimes. Often, however, the pain feels good. In fact, people say that hurts good
Mm-hmm.
because they're feeling the release of the tissue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've found that for myself, just breathing through it and allowing you to go a little bit deeper and open up from the inside. So not only are you pushing from the outside,
Yes.
but you're also opening up from the inside. So, wow, this is great. So I think I feel like we're getting out of this conversation what I'm wanting to, which is to help people to understand that there is this methodology, this approach to the body called Hellerwork. In at least in the people that come to see me, it's like they think about massage, or they think about, they may say, well, I want a, Swedish massage, or I want a deep tissue massage. In the state of North Carolina, there's both. You're actually licensed as a massage therapist or a body worker. I don't know how it is other places. And so, again, to realize that there's a difference between just a standard massage therapy and body work, and that you can actually physically change the body, just in the same way that when somebody goes to a chiropractor, at least in our office, we can actually make physical changes to the structure of your body so that it actually, as Howard is saying, it's in better relationship with gravity. So,
Yeah.
so how have you found people that actually work on you?
Sure. In fact, one of the attractions to coming to Hawaii was that there is a very fine Rolfer 4 blocks from where I live.
Have you two worked on each other yet?
We haven't. I have been so busy trying to get settled here. And in the midst of getting settled, I had to go back to the East Coast and Midwest to see my clients there. So I literally was here for a month getting settled, and then went back to the East Coast and Midwest for a month, and then came back here, and I've only been here 2 weeks. So I haven't had a chance to trade work with him yet, but I'm really looking forward to it. He's got a great reputation.
Very good. And in each town where people live, again, I'm going to give the resources for hellerwork.com and for a link to Howard's work. Look around in your town. There's different people who do amazing things with the human body. And so part of my intention around Living Max Health is really to connect people so they understand what resources are available to them. It's not necessary to live with injuries and just let them get worse over time, or in the
Which
case
they will.
they will. And in the case, like you were talking about your father, where if you have a genetic condition that makes you more prone to deterioration, you have to do everything possible to be able to slow and stop that process. Because if you don't do something, and you have to start earlier is better. Cannot emphasize that enough. Earlier is better. I was very lucky because I started down this path. I was 20 years old, 22 years old. I even started before 22. And so I got a jump on it, and somehow I got something in my mind that said, I need to work on things now because I'm not always going to be this way. And I feel like it's really paid off. And even if you haven't started yourself, you can start today. Start today. Start today. So
I endorse that point of view completely, and I want to add something to it. If you go to one practitioner who does a particular kind of manual therapy, chiropractic, rolfing, PT, etc., and it doesn't work for you, try another.
Try another. Yeah.
That doesn't work for you, try another.
So
eventually you'll find somebody who does.
Yes, absolutely. And certainly somebody may go and have a bad haircut or a bad meal and they go somewhere else, but when it comes to their body, they I hear people say that all the time about chiropractic. It's like, I went to the chiropractor, didn't like them, so I didn't go back. And so now they're
never go to another chiropractor after.
Ever. But, and then sometimes it takes them many, many years to kind of get past and go, oh, maybe I'll try it again. And then, sometimes those are the people that I see. But wow, this is great. So, listen, we'll definitely do this again. I definitely want to make sure that when we do this next time, we get a view of the Kauai mountains and the beauty in your area, so that we can actually see where you live. And
the view off the deck of my office is a picture postcard. I have 3 mountain ranges within view.
I'm visualizing right now. I can't see it through the screen. Very good. Well, this has been a joy, Howard. And it's so important to me to make people aware of these resources. Every day I learn about new things. I'm like, I never heard that before. And if you haven't heard about something, there's no way that you can act upon it.
Yes.
So about a lot of things that are just commonly out there, the yoga, the Pilates, the CrossFit, the Orange Theory, whatever it is. There's many, many more approaches and techniques that can help you. So with Living Max Health, Howard is proof positive that amazing changes can happen with the body, and we're so happy to have you on here. And any last words of wisdom, anything that you can share with us that is on your mind right now?
No, I think I just said it earlier. If you try a manual therapist and it doesn't work, try another and keep trying until you find what does work. And I almost guarantee that eventually you will find somebody who can help you significantly.
Beautiful. Very nice. Well,
and thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
Absolutely. This is Living Max Health, where we're changing lives. We're here transforming world health and giving you the solutions and the things that you need in order to live the best life possible. Thanks so much for watching. Get involved in the conversation. We'd love to have you in the community. Have a great day.